Hi Jack, can you introduce yourself please?
Yes, my name's Jack Curtis. I'm a member of the Sunderland Maritime Heritage and a trustee and a committee member. I was born in the east end of Sunderland, right on the riverside in 1930. And I had a very fortunate childhood as my grandparents lived on the South Dock because my grandfather was the port diver there. So I grew up knowing the full area from being born. And that's really a brief outline of my background.
That's great Jack. What do you remember about actually living on the South Docks?
I remember quite a lot, but we don't want to be here all day. Having been carried there and wheeled down in my pram, I can go right back in the depth of my memory as far as it'll reach, remembering the docks as it was, because through the 1930s we gradually came out of a recession, and instead of having ships laid up in the docks, we had ships actively loading in the docks. We've had 8 coal staves active at that time, and they filled a multitude of ships. They actually loaded 5.5 million tonnes per annum, and the coal came from the whole Durham coal field. And this created a vast amount of work on the docks, and it was a hive of industry.
Can I ask you Jack, where was your sort of house in the South Docks?
Well, we lived right on the dock, adjacent to the sea lock, which was right on the eastern edge of the dock on man-made land, because that land didn't exist. It was a brilliant engineer designed and built the docks, and he excavated it in the rocky foreshore. And we lived right on the eastern extremity, adjacent to the sea lock, a wonderful place to grow up, and we had a shipyard just across the road. The noise was tremendous, the filth was tremendous, but for a boy, it was a fairyland.
On that note, what was the funniest thing you can recall about your time in the docks?
The funniest thing I can recall about my time on the dock, well, it wasn't funny in a sense, was my grandfather wouldn't go in the shelters during the war. So I used to fiddle so that I could go and stay with them and hope there was an air raid. And when I told him what I was doing, he had a damn good laugh about it. He said, "I like your sense of humour, but I like your courage better."
People say, Jack, that it was hard work, and no doubt it was hard work in the docks and grimy and horrible like you say. Do you have any examples of the horrible hard work in the docks?
Yes, plenty of hard work on the docks. You had a shipyard virtually just across the road, and I saw everything that went on with regards to shipbuilding, from the laying of the keel to the launch of the ship, and I even fiddled preferential treatment and got there underneath the berth at the bow of the ship, and the ship slid over you a little bit and went down the slipways, and all the tallow fried, and the smell, terrible smells, but exciting smells. And of course, building a ship required a hell of a lot of rivets when I was a lad, and you had boys leaving school at 14, thrown into shipyards as little heater boys, and they had a little foot furnace which you blew up and blew up and blew up until you got it red hot, and you put the rivets in the fire and you heated the rivets till they were malleable, and then he picked them out with tongs and he threw them to a catcher boy who had like a frying pan, and he caught it and he got it with these tongs and he threw it to the hadder on, and he picked it up and put it through the hole and then haddered on with the hammer, and the two riveters, a left-hander usually and a right-hander if possible, clenched the rivet, and the noise was tremendous.
And I bet the health and safety wasn't like it is today.
I've said it many times, but working off 2 8-inch planks was the extreme safety measures that the shipyards took. The beauty about it was, if there was a beauty, that men learned to be careful, because these were highly dangerous places, and especially for a lad coming out of school, inexperienced, he had to be told what he could do and what he couldn't do, and many a lad got a damn good clout across the ear if he disobeyed the safety rules that were laid down locally by the men operating in the areas. It took all sorts of skills to build a ship, and I don't think they've ever been catalogued properly. But some of the ships I saw and some of the internal fittings, etc., were fantastic.
Jack, I know some of your family members worked on the docks. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my grandfather, of course, lived on the docks and therefore worked from the docks. But he was the river diver, and he was on 24-hour call-out 7 days a week. Worked with the tides, you had tugboats coming in and out of the docks, etc. But my ancestors, I had a remote uncle who was a trimmer, and a trimmer sat in the hold of the ship, and when the coal was poured in, when they stopped pouring it, he had special shovels, and he trimmed the ship to keep it on an even keel so that when it was at sea, it was stable, or as stable as possible. I had men who were painters, riveters, you name it. I had ancestors involved in all the trades in shipbuilding.
Where did these workers have the dinners, and what did they have to eat?
Well, in my time, a lot of men carried bait. Now, bait was usually sandwiches of one description or another, cheese sandwiches, bit of ham in, different things, wrapped up in the greaseproof paper off the loaf of bread, right? And of course, everybody on the docks, and well, in the shipyards in general, had a can, a tin can, and there was always a boy allocated as the can boy in each department on the dock or in the shipyard. And of course, what you've got to remember is a shipyard was full of shops. There was a paint shop, a plumber shop, a joiner's shop, a fitting shop, a blacksmith shop. So when you went into a shipyard, you didn't realise it when you were 14 or 15, but you were going into a place full of shops. And of course, each shop had a trade union man, so he became the shop steward. And all these things evolved in the shipyards, and they gradually evolved into such a fine art that a boy would be put in there, he would make the cans of tea 3 times a day, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock, for all the men, and he would get paid a tenner a week, or 6pence a week to be precise.
Well, that's led brilliantly into my next question, which was, what do you recall about what the lads earned on the docks? How did they get their pay? Obviously it was in cash. Can you tell us something about how they got paid?
I can tell you exactly. When you worked in a shipyard, you drew a board. Before 7:30, you drew a board, which was a piece of wood about that big and about 3 inches wide, with a sloping top, painted black with the white letters on of your number in the shipyard. And on that board you rubbed it with chalk, and you wrote on at the end of the day the work you'd carried out. You also wrote on the number of the ship that you were working on and any other details, and when you left the yard through the time office, you handed your board in, and that regulated the whole thing. You got paid the hours you worked. But the funny part about it was that you were allowed 2 minutes to be late, but if you were 3 minutes late, they docked you a quarter of an hour your pay. And my first pay at William Doxford and Sons on the 3rd of January 1945 was 14 old shillings and 10 pence, which is about 75 pence today, and that was for a 48-hour week, 7:30 till 5:20 with an hour for your dinner, plus from 7:30 till 12 o'clock on a Saturday, and then the rest of the week was your own.
My last question is, Jack, do you remember any sailing vessels on the way?
Yes. Well, no, that's a lie. I can remember small commons and such like with sails, but there was one that I think was the last sailing ship to come to the weir in 1932 when I was 2 years old. And I would be wheeled past it in my pram many times while it was discharging 15,000 bags of Australian wheat at the granaries in Sunderland. And people will wonder why the wheat was bagged. Well, it was bad quite simply to allow air to ventilate the wheat to stop internal combustion setting up. If there was any dampness or moisture in the wheat, then of course you could get combustion, and ships did actually take fire on the long route from Australia to England and burn in the middle of the ocean. But in truth, the Killoran, it was called, was a magnificent three-master, fully rigged, standing at the Granary Quay, and I've got a picture of it in my archives, just as a memento from the past. The Killoran.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Most welcome.